Treading the waters of healthcare insurance can be a muddy mess. We deal with it on a daily basis and get the same questions day in and day out, so we feel like we have a pretty good understanding and grasp of the situation. In today's video, I'm going to help you understand some of the basic terminology of healthcare insurance and more specifically, how you can apply this to meet your own needs. Hey everybody, this is Michael with Total Physical Therapy, and today I'm going to help you understand some of the basics of healthcare insurance, specifically as it relates to using it for physical therapy services. Now, to understand your coverage better, first we need to get some of the nomenclature out of the way. So let's talk about some of the basic vocabulary. We're going to talk about premiums, deductibles, coinsurance and co-pays, out-of-pocket maxes, individual versus family benefits, in-network versus out-of-network, as well as accumulations. So let's get to it. Premiums. Consider a premium to be a rent. This is like a monthly dollar amount that you have to pay to your insurance whether or not you utilize that insurance plan. That'll bring us to deductibles. A deductible is a set dollar amount that must be met prior to your policy coverage becoming active. An example of this. Let's take this current year, 2021. Medicare Part B has a deductible of $203. This means that Medicare beneficiaries, in addition to paying those monthly premiums, again, the rent, they're going to be responsible for $203 out of their pocket. Now, this can be going to one healthcare provider, or it can be split among many. But the bottom line is that the total accumulation of $203 will come out of their pocket to any number of providers. Once that deductible has been met, that policy then becomes active and will pay out its percentage. We're going to go into discussing coinsurance and co-pays. Let's start with coinsurance. Now, in the previous example, I gave the example of Part B within the Medicare system having a very traditional 80-20 coverage. A coinsurance is a percentage of the coverage that your plan will pay out, leaving the beneficiary with the remaining percent. So in that example, 80% coverage is what Medicare will pay out, leaving you with the 20% requirement. Now, we'll save the context of this video just to primary insurance and leave out secondary or supplemental insurances. We'll leave that for another video. We'll just keep it simple here. Likewise, if your policy has a 70-30 or a 60-40 coverage, that means that you're going to be responsible for 30 or the 40% respectively in the examples that I gave just a moment ago. Now, your plan may not have coinsurance. Rather, it may have a copay. Now, the difference between coinsurance and copay is that your coinsurance fluctuates based on the charges from your healthcare providers, whereas a copay is a set dollar amount, typically on an individual visit or session basis. So in an example of a copay, this set cost per visit is not going to fluctuate. It's something that gives you an opportunity to say, for example, that you have a $20 copay, and each and every time you see a provider, you are going to be responsible for $20, flat fee. Now, in most cases, we find that policies that have a copay do not also have a deductible, but you are going to find some exceptions to that rule. So you just have to dig into the finer details. And in digging into those finer details, you're going to have to identify whether or not they have terminology in your policy that says that the deductible applies. If the deductible applies, if there's language or lingo in the contract that says that the deductible applies, it means that you're going to be responsible for that deductible in addition to your per visit copays. If the lingo does not say that, or it more specifically says that it does not apply, it's very simple. It just means you have a copay and you do not need to worry about the deductible. Let's talk about out-of-pocket maxes. An out-of-pocket max, as the name implies, is a set maximum dollar amount that you'll have to spend before the policy begins paying 100%. An example, if your out-of-pocket max is $5,000 and you have paid $5,000 out of pocket to a number of healthcare providers, then that means that that policy should pick up 100% of the remaining charges for the rest of your calendar year. So that brings us to in-network versus out-of-network. In-network means that your provider is contractually in agreement with your insurance plan, and any type of payment is going to be contractually obligated, versus out-of-network, which means that your provider does not have a working contractual relationship with your insurance plan. Now, there's a lot of stereotyping when it comes to in-network, out-of-network, as well as there's a lot of fake information or misinformation when it comes to this topic. And what we can say is that you should not value what you are potentially seeking out of your healthcare provider as being valuable or non-valuable based on the network status. There are plenty great providers that serve in-network with certain policies, but there are also many great providers that provide coverage outside of network. So we encourage people to leave the in versus out of network status to the very end in making a decision whether or not you are going to use that provider. If that provider happens to be out of network and you still choose to utilize their services, they are going to hopefully be able to walk you through the exact dollar cost. At Total, we can give you those exact dollar costs. That's going to bring us to our last terminology, accumulations. Accumulations are simply the total sum accumulated that you have paid out that have been applied to your deductibles and out-of-pocket maxes. Now that you have a better understanding of the terminology of basic healthcare insurance, let's get down to the nitty-gritty and talk about how to apply this. Well, let's talk about one simple concept, a calendar year policy versus a contract year policy. Now, most healthcare plans now these days are calendar year policies, which means they stretch from January 1st to December 31st within the same year. But there are still some that are contract years, which means that that coverage might start and stop at any point in time throughout the calendar year. So you'll just want to make sure that you understand and recognize when your policy becomes effective and when it terminates. At Total Physical Therapy, we believe in total price transparency, and even in the presence of dealing with healthcare insurance, with the available knowledge that we have to us, we feel that it is just so important for us to get as near to the exact dollar cost for you considering hiring us to provide your care. We just simply don't believe in offices and providers telling an individual that their cost to receive services is going to depend on what they get. At Total, we are going to verify your benefits ahead of time. That is independent of whether or not we are in versus out of network, whether you have a plan that we've heard of or a plan that we've never heard of. We are going to call and verify the benefits, not when you're here, but before you're here. We're going to let you know that information before you even step foot in our door. Now, while we have an abundance of information readily available to us, sometimes we get inaccurate or not up-to-date information. And one of the common occurrences of this is when somebody knows that they've met their deductible and or their out-of-pocket maxes, and we verify benefits and we do not see that they've met those contract stipulations, and individuals can then be confused as to why we tell them that they haven't met it. Well, to answer this, it's very simple. Oftentimes, you will pay for a portion of your services to a provider or to an office, and while you have given your hard-earned cash directly over to them, it still requires them billing your insurance, and more specifically, your insurance actually processing that. Now, one of the easiest ways to know if this has occurred is for you to obtain an EOB, or an explanation of benefits. Your insurance will provide these with each and every service that is billed out to your insurance. You can obtain these online, and in most cases they will also mail or email them to you. So in the cases where somebody feels like they've met their deductible, It's usually a case of a clinic or a facility having outsourced billing. Well, outsourced billing means that they are utilizing a company outside of their business structure to do the billing, and oftentimes we see that this can take weeks, if not months, down the road before a bill is actually processed through an insurance carrier. And so at Total, we do everything in-house. We feel like it gives you the best opportunity to apply and utilize your health insurance, because anytime that you receive any care from us, that bill, those charges are going out same day. So those charges should be applied to your insurance coverage really promptly, giving you a more accurate, up-to-date reflection of your accumulations. So let's talk about, if we have some information and it doesn't smell check with you, let's talk you through exactly how we go about obtaining that information and how you could do it yourself. Now, we have access to some online portals that give us some of this information, but we do have to pull out the good old-fashioned telephone and obtain some information from time to time, and you can do the exact same thing. You're simply going to call that number on the back of your card. This would be the same number that we call, and you are going to go through the teleprompts until you can get to a point during that auto prompt that asks you for eligibility and benefits. These are key terms that you want to use: eligibility and benefits. Once you've gotten to eligibility and benefits, you're going to be right into an area where you can specifically ask for physical therapy in an office setting. If you're coming to us, those are the specific benefits that you want to seek. You want to seek physical therapy in an office setting. Now, going back to some of those terms that we mentioned earlier, you're going to want to find that information out once you've gotten to this point through the teleprompts. You're going to want to find out your effective date. When did your policy become effective, and when does it terminate? You'll also want to identify whether or not you have any copays or co-insurance. You'll also want to know if you have any deductibles and whether or not specifically physical therapy applies to that deductible. You'll want to determine your out-of-pocket maxes. You'll also want to know if any pre-certification or pre-authorization requirements are there. You'll want to know, are there any limitations? Common limitations that we see are visit maxes. So an example might be that you have a 35 visit max for a plan of care, which means that any further treatment beyond that max would require some more communication with your healthcare provider and your insurance. So hopefully this type of information gives you an understanding of how not only to understand your policy, but to see some of the pitfalls that come with having a provider's office tell you that you have not met certain criteria versus met criteria. And lastly, giving you an opportunity to smell check this for yourself. Call your own insurance plan, feel like you're educated about the process, and be able to obtain and verify those benefits for yourself. If you found this video useful, please share it with a friend or family member. And if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to us. Be glad to answer any more questions. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.